Yes, before we launch into bridge scenes from Fearful Symmetry, there was a little bit of lollygagging as to who should be on the bridge and whatnot, and we decided let's just do it as the script says because, yeah, where Shinko's there, because for the same reason Molly and her husband wife are there, same reason, so they're there, and I was gonna go around and look around for could there be any relatives of Alexander Shenko that could be that character. No, they wouldn't know anything about Worf with Quark and Odo. Could have been Worf, but that didn't make sense. He's clearly a younger guy in the script. It's clearly Alexander, younger but not young anymore. He's over 40, but yeah, younger than Worf. So it's got to be the son. So it has to be Alexander. He's just on the tail temporarily. Also in the script, Cedo Jaxa is mentioned as the first officer, but never appears again in the series. So she's now in the series. She's now in the scene. So that's one change. Is we kind of forgot about her. So she's in there. And so let's just go on with the bridge footage of Fearful Symmetry. And also of note, after watching the dailies that we watched, there's some crud on some of the faces, but so what? We're presuming the crud on one of the faces is not a deal breaker because the lady Chimera was down on the planet and had just been rescued, so I didn't have time to wash it off. Or it's some sort of a weird modern thing they've got stuck to. No, it's fine. Leave it. It's fine. They all look a little gum. Not gonna fix it. Just let's leave it. It's fine. It's a something that makes them look different. It's fine. Okay, another brief thing to note. Note that is Maj Bolo, and that's Cedo Jaxa. And everyone's in the right place, and so Odo and Quark are with them, and the story is basically a cat and mouse shell game type chase. Not so much a submarine chase like on Wrath of Khan, but more like it's not a ground battle. It's more like it's naval battle, but it's not subs. It's more like ships, like Navy ships faking each other out, like sunk my battleship type of thing. Yeah. Anyway, so we will start the scene. Well, we've completed all the bridge scenes from Fearful Symmetry. I'm going to go on tomorrow and do the bridge scenes from the next one. And that one doesn't have as many bridge scenes. This one had the most. It's half of the episode. So, it's almost half the episode. Yeah. A lot of bridge scenes, a lot of excitement. Trying to film this many years after it was written as the 1996 story and then rewritten in 2002. I noticed a lot of similarities to that episode, The Ship, as well as a lot of some similarities to Star Trek 09 and modern Star Trek. Well, the other ones. So indirectly, some of these people were influenced, full circle in the story. So we have, Chief O'Brien and stuff. The rest of the, so we have, well, of course, Rene Benoit has passed, so couldn't get him, obviously. But having Odo and Kira show up again and the cast. This is a homage to Deep Space Nine, as bold or more bold than the one that was on Lower Decks, episode 2, I think, of last season. So we did it too. This was originally a 1990 script. It was a 1996 script, Brown and Yeager, under our real names, and there's been much apocrypha since then, claiming that a little bit more than actually happened, because it was embellished over the years, and we found the rejection letters that actually claimed, no, it didn't really say that I had a firm grasp of the characters. It didn't really say that we were going to use this eventually. It didn't say things like that. It was a form letter, and it said, we're sending this back to you because the show is over. and it appeared in 1999 in the mail. And then the Voyager one appeared in 2001 in the mail. What was added to it were the few extra letters that had been lost, and those were the things that mentioned that stuff. But yeah, the actual rejection letter was a form letter sent out to everybody saying, like, okay, it's nice that you basically wrote to us and did this during the contest. You didn't win the contest, obviously. Here's your script back. We can't keep it. They won't do that today, incidentally. But back in the contest, they wanted to return all the contest scripts to the contest people, which is cool. Of course, I'll probably mention something else about this episode when we get around to actually filming the rest. But for now, that's what's going on. This was the chosen as our second episode. Well, technically third, because the pilot is a two-parter. And it had the most bridge scenes. The other bridge scenes had less. So it was a bottle show on a bridge, basically. It's a bottle show when you don't land on a planet. So they're never on a planet. They're always on a ship. They're briefly on a planet in a room. So set-wise, it would have been easy to film set-wise, because all they'd have to do was walk over to the Defiant and run about and film there. But story-wise, I can see why, from years later, now that it's 2023, I can see why they didn't want to film this. It would have been extremely difficult there's so much going on about the Dominion which was in that note, saying that we were going to. There was a note. The note's lost, and it said something to the effect of those things. It said, "You understand Cisco and Odo and Quark really well." There was a note that's lost. That said that, and that's what that was. That wasn't. It was an extra note. But they probably said that to a number of the fans. The Voyager one was stamped twice, in and out through the pile, which means that they looked at the pile again, brought it up to the top 2 or 3 seasons later, looked at it, said, "Oh, maybe we could do this." Oh no. That one didn't end up being so much incurred in the DNA of Voyager. My Voyager script didn't end up too much in Voyager. But the DS9 one did, and some of the dialogue in here will recognize from the other episode, filmed by another writer called The Ship. That is because they just read my script, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll use some of that dialogue in there. Some of the bad guy lady, and the exile, and that kind of thing. We'll use some of that." So they did. They probably didn't know where they got it, though. I don't think they intentionally cribbed it. I think whoever read the script was just like in the back of his head, he just wrote it down. So yeah, it wasn't like that. And I don't mind, because part of it got filmed. That's The Ship. So it's all cool. Well, some of it got filmed. It has similar elements. I'm sure the fans will recognize them. And go like, wait a minute, that's that episode of DS9. And they also pointed out the female Vorta thing, too, which was unusual in the original. Oh, female Vorta, yeah. Introduced in the Jem'Hadar and The Ship. A little earlier, they introduced one as well. And I just thought it would be cool if one of them wanted to get asylum to further the story's Roddenberry-like premise of them. What happened if some of the founders were actually not evil, but they wanted to actually escape? So I thought that was a neat idea. And this version was tweaked a little so that it would match the next one a little bit better. The Voyager one. It's the Voyager one. The Voyager one is the Breeders and the Latori and the other key Draconis people. We changed it to Draconis as the planet. And Draconis is a colony of, or at least one of the Draconises in Silly Trek is a colony of the TV planet, which is sort of the Roman planet. But it's been updated because the aliens there have learned about television and stuff. And originally, so they're a spin-off of that. And so also a little bit of TMS in there, a little bit of Gemilt in there. Because he went there to pitch his idea to them too. And it didn't work in the stories. Ironically, his story was being pitched to ours. So anyway, that's kind of bizarre. Anyway, so yeah, but Star Trek did not accept any script submissions after that contest, which lasted from about 94 to about 2000, just before Enterprise was in production. Yeah, and some of this seemed like Enterprise later on, with the Cindy War and all that being the other thing, and the Dominion thing. elements of this story kind of bled into Picard season 3 a little bit, which is kind of fun. So this is a follow-up to that. The changeling lady and all that was clearly Ariadne in that story. They called her, I think they called her Vedic, which is Ariadne. It was Ariadne. She came back 40 years later to attack Picard and crew. That's who it was. Originally she was called Ariadne, not Ariana. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, but obviously not. That's why we threw in weird names like the Grayson Obji, which is from Transtech. That way we would know if they ever used that word, it would be a paper town, which is that's when somebody wants to know whether you've borrowed their script or not and thrown in, and if you throw in a word that's unusual that they'll use, and then you're all, aha, you guys read my script. Yeah. There's a paper town in Voyager from the Voyager script. I know they read it. Flotter. The Flotter endocrine system is the made-up silly Trek star system in which Flodai exists, the planet Flodai. So the character of Flotter, the Cillian character, that literally Cillian character, who is on the planet where the young Naomi Wildman, who also has Star Trek soap opera aging syndrome like Alexander, and she's instantly like 4 or 5 in like one season, played by Scarlett Palmer's, who would go on to be in other stuff. Yeah. I think she became, was she even Buffy and some other things, I think? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, but yeah, it's funny that like that in that story there's this character named Flutter, and it's spelled the same way. It's like they read that was a paper town. That was a word that was cool and threw in there, and I figured that they would use it in a Voyager episode. They did. It was in a Voyager episode. The Tuvok being the Arbiter story, that's next. Also, they kind of did that, but kind of not. I ended up using it in the Space Vanguard's Star Trekkers series, Space Vanguard series. I ended up using it in Disney's as well. I used them both. Canary Space, so there's also elements of that. So I have used these stories since then in other stories. But getting the original prints from 2002 versions of them from that Transtech disc that were in there, we were able to reassemble them and use them this season. And yeah, I can see looking back on it, it would be very difficult to film this as an episode. It would be expensive, a lot of special effects and stuff going on. As an episode in Star Trek, it would have been like almost a season finale. They revealed too much. So I can see what that note was trying to mention. Like you can't. We were going to do something else with the Dominion in the note. You going in a different direction. Of course, you weren't in the writers' room, so you wouldn't know. They did go in a different direction. But then years later, the Picard show went back in that direction. Right back there. Yeah. So this does seem a little bit like oh, you're just ripping off season 3 of Picard, making fun of it. So. No, we're not. Paying homage. However, this story was technically written in 1996 or 1995. So we are not, in fact, the story is the same. We changed some of the characters around because Cisco's not around. The other ones are older now, and we changed some information in there. Also, it threw in there is one added scene in the bridge scenes. Miral, Paris, and what wouldn't have been there, of course. And Molly, and Miral and O'Brien are there, and they're married. They're ladies. They're married, I decided to throw in a line where Jevental addresses them. Jevental being a Trill, he's naturally trans. He's part human and part Trill symbiote, and they're gay. They married each other. The story, and the alien is not affronted. The alien goes like. Alien ladies, they were introduced, and she says, "Oh, I'm familiar with that, because the intended from the mirror universe, the intended Kira, visited our planet, taught us about that. So the intended's apparently been running around, going to different Cillian planets, and that's why she looked kind of like the intended. She's actually a Kira action figure, but she's like there was like an exile group on the planet." That had gone out hundreds of years before Odo's 100. Odo was one of the 100. and they were the earlier changelings that decided to become humanoid by using the device to become humanoid, and or back again. Yeah, and they kind of had something like that in the Picard season 3. Yeah, they had something similar to that. So clearly, Terry Metalis back in the day read that script because he was around. He probably read it. He's oh, that's cool. They should do that. He was around, and Melinda Snodgrass was around too. She read it. She remembered it. A very interesting title, so I remembered it. Yeah, there was a discussion at a convention where I mentioned those 2 scripts that I wrote for the contest. She remembered both of them from that convention. Maybe she was being nice, but no, I think she actually generally remembered them. She thought, "Oh yeah, the one where you're Tuvok and Janeway." Yeah, we couldn't do that. And she said I was probably the. She said she was probably the person who helped Lolita Faggio, was the script coordinator at the time, looking over the scripts. And yeah, she might have seen it. So she said, yeah, that happens. She said that happens in Star Trek. Your chances were astronomical. But the fact that they looked at it twice and stamped it, that's interesting. That means they were kind of interested. And they said that wasn't just on a pile of 1,000 scripts that season, back when that contest happened, and never again. After 2000, never again. They never did the contest again. After that, well, it got up on the pile. It was like the first 100 or so on that pile. I looked at it again. Anyway, so that's all for this episode. So this next scene is the ops meeting room briefing room, not ops, meeting briefing room scene in Fearful Symmetry. It's about a minute and a half. And it's all the meeting room. And there's another meeting room scene later, but this is the main meeting room scene in that one. We're going to go to that one, and we're going to film that one in this set. So that's what's going on. Fearful Symmetry. Okay, there's a scene in here in the Deep Space Nine story. Deep Space 4 story. Fearful Symmetry. With Odo and Quark. And they don't have to be in the mess hall to have this discussion. I think they should be right here. Everybody leaves the room, and they do that. So that's what's going to happen here. We're going to do Odo and Quark's next scene, page 13, up to where the ship leaves. So we're going to do that right now. Because it makes sense. Because do it right now. So, Odo and Quark. Yes, back to that Deep Space Nine story. I think that's the last of the mess hall scenes. And other scenes. That scene needed to be in there, though, just to liven this episode up. It's very serious. They were kind of implying it anyway. So there's a little extra bit there where they're, because they can't really do that. Armin Shimmerman is alive and Roger Benoit died, but they totally would have been an item back then. And it was all the Kira thing was tied to the fact that he loved someone else. Because he didn't love Kira. Bashir was with Kira the whole time. They just should have gone there. And yeah, no, Dax was never with... That never made any sense with Bashir. No, Dax would not end up with Bashir. Kira would. And yeah, I know the actors aren't the great characters, but they would have. And Odo and Quark, the same thing. They would have ended up together. They would have been a couple. They're like an odd couple. They're like Burns and Allen. They're like Mattow and Lemon. They're like old OG Klugman and then the other guy from Odd Couple. They're an odd couple. That's what they are. If Quark had kissed Odo, it would have been like, oh, all right. If they ever did a remake of DS9, it would be the pièce de résistance, the toujours des femmes. Or would it be the La Miserable? I don't know. It would be something. It would be something, yes. So that concludes the meeting room scenes and break scene in Fearful Symmetry. So, yeah. And done for the day again. So that was cool. There's more, of course. There's a little bit tag in there. I can see why these 2 scripts were a little long and a little confusing, why they didn't actually film them. Like years later, looking back at these as more of a scriptwriter, producer person, I can see why it's fine the way it is. It just needed a rewrite. And then it would have flowed better. Also, yeah, I didn't know any of the other stuff they were going to do with the Dominion at that point. How would I have known? I couldn't have known. I wasn't on the writer's room back then or anything. Yeah, so, but it is an interesting twist. And The notes were they're going to go back in a different direction than I did. Yeah, there was a note with the thing. That note is lost. So. Oh, well. Anyway, so there we are. There's more to this episode. This was just the meeting room scenes and the break scene. Yeah, there's more to it. Here we are, night shot. This Deep Space Nine promenade. Ops station. There's a couple of ops station scenes. We're not doing any sick bay tonight. We're just going to do some ops scenes in the ops station on the station, and we're going to do those concurrently. And they're going to start. Yeah. The full day shoot. I think we're done for the evening. We're done for the evening. That's fine. Full day shoot. Yeah, I wanted to do the ops Deep Space Nine scene. Don't bother with a cargo scene yet. Do that later. Want to make it look more cool and dramatic anyway. Final scene. Story. Yeah, tomorrow you can do the rest of the sick bay scenes, and then there's 3 episodes that have a sick bay scene. One of them is a mirror universe sick bay scene. So it's a little different. So yeah, we have the sick bay set, but we've dressed it up like the ops station. So that should be pretty easy. I'll just leave everybody around. I'll put away the figures, but yeah, I'll leave everybody around. And so we have, yeah, that's it for the evening. This was Fearful Symmetry, this part. I can see why this episode, like the other one, was a little long. And if they just had trimmed off a few extraneous scenes and made it more linear in terms of switching from scene to scene, unlike an early Transformers fanfic, they probably would have taken this one too, because it was real close to being good enough. It just needed to be polished and rewritten. Fearful Symmetry was also liked by the pocketbooks. They rewrote it as a Borg and Kira episode, similar to the one that I submitted to them for a Strange Worlds contest back in the day. But not similar enough that I could say, oh no, it stole it. They just stole the title. Had nothing to do with it. But now I'm stealing it back, so haha. No. The title's from Blake. It's from the tiger, from Blake. Of course, we couldn't actually show a tiger, so I made like a meow noise in the background. So the bird is a hand going flopping around in the background. Because we couldn't show a bird either. It would look like a cheesy screensaver. It'd be like beep, 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 beep. Yeah, so like, yeah, hand puppets stuff. Yeah, so, yeah, and Nog was there the whole time. He's watching the station. So, he's not in the script, but he should have been. He's there. And then we had a cute little scene in the turbo lift as they were coming up to Ops. I threw in that scene just before Ops opens up on page 50, indicating that Nog is concerned that his ship has been thrashed by his number one, by Tal. Which is funny. It's a good one. Very reminiscent of DS9. They would have done something like that. So yeah. Also, Mark's Cards noted the "putty in my hands" line from Odo is actually in. Yeah, that was actually in the story. So that's earlier though. That's when we introduced "putty in my hands." Oh. Yeah, that's earlier. And later on, they go on a date, or they're going to at the Replimat probably. In fact, we joked yesterday about we're not going to eat at Quarks because you suck. Yeah, we don't want your food from Quarks. It's overpriced. Go somewhere nice. Oh, yeah. But on the Ferengi planet, they have Quark's Starfleet experience, the Star Trek experience, right? Which, interestingly enough, is a Kal Kat addend to Lower Decks. Absolutely, it's one of ours. Yeah. But they usually did that cartoon show like a year ago, and then it has to be animated and all that. So yeah, it takes a while to do those ones, the animated ones. The short track ones, it appears they're cheaper because it looks like they were flash animation or something. Yeah, they're cheaper. Also, I had screwed up and had to repost the latest very short tracks. I spelled it wrong, so I reposted it. But yeah, anyway, so here we have they've seen perfectly salvageable ops scene on the ops, and it could be a little different than it was 20 years ago, easily. They could have changed up some things. Yeah, but pretty much it was very similar to ops originally. It even has the turbo lift up the outside with the car going up. It's just like really cool. That was cool. You'll be like, how did they? It is go motion. It is go motion. How did they do that? Well, I can show you how we did that actually. What I did here, the magic of filmmaking on stage. Well, it's panned away. You bring the camera in close over the actors sitting on the fake turbo lift here at the doors. Very similar to what they did on Next Generation, Classic Trek and all that. Because the elevator doors were separate for the, on a Star Trek bridge, they would close it, open the doors. We can't do that here. But it just opens as an opened ops elevator at the top of ops on DS9. So we've got the opportunity to do an open one. And what I did is I just turned the camera, put it on the rig, and as they were in close and a nice tight close-up, I just turned the camera into ops after they arrived. And boom, they're on the bridge. Cool. Well, I can't do that with the other one, but I can do that with this one. And that's actually part of the sick bay set. Okay, we did a lot of the meeting footage, so we didn't have to do that again. We already done it, so that's cool. So this next scene is Jeremy Astor and the Tiger. Originally, it was Jake Sisko and the Tiger back in the original story, DS9. But of course, Jake Sisko is long gone, and so is Captain Sisko. They're not there. It's Javon and Jeremy. So John's not there. Jeremy's on the holodeck, and he's hunting a tiger on the holodeck, and thus the title drop. So I can't show them hunting a tiger though, so you're gonna have to like fake it pantomime. Yeah. This is on page 23. This is the O'Brien vehicle scene on the shuttlecraft. Well, part of it. We've put it up just to do this one scene and then stop. And hopefully we can do that without it falling apart and knocking everyone over. We were missing a brig scene. A scene in the brig. We're going through this. This is an earlier brig scene. So let's do that. Let's doing this. So yeah, what happened here is there is a scene that in terms of even Star Trek wouldn't make sense. The Doctor and Kira giving us information we already know. They're telling, not showing. That's kind of the problem. Also, how would they know? They're on the station. They're in another part of the galaxy. There's no way they got a subspace message to Deep Space Nine through the wormhole to where they were. No, that's not how that works. That would be impossible. So, and it's not important. It's like, oh, we already know this. We're following the ship and crew on the ship. We don't need a scene where they're explaining how the changeling got away. It's like they're just talking to the audience, telling the audience, oh, look, this happened in the last scene. And it's happening here, and we're going to talk about it. What happened in the last scene that we weren't privy to. It's giving information you're not privy to. So when writing a story, if you have your characters give information that the rest of the characters wouldn't know, it doesn't make sense. It would be like if you had a gossip scene and they were completely in another room or another house, and somehow they knew what the gossip scene was in an additional other house in another town. It makes no sense. So it doesn't need to be there. I'm cutting the scene, cutting to Bashir and Kira talking about well, we already know that the changeling got away again. It's on the ship. And they got away in another ship, and yeah, we don't need it. No.
Tal and O'Brien are fine, Doctor. 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 Well, that's a relief. Well, that's a relief. Oh, that's a relief. Where are they? Well, that's a relief. Where are they? Well, that's a relief. Where are they? Still in the Gamma Quadrant. Still in the Gamma Quadrant. Wait a minute, this scene doesn't make sense. I'm gonna omit this scene. You know why? How the fuck would they know where they were? They're in the Gamma Quadrant. Yeah, that makes no sense. I'm cutting this scene from the movie. There's no reason that should... No. 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 Yeah, how would they know that? They don't know that. This is going to be the last scene in Fearful Symmetry. We're done for the day. And yeah, so we'll have done Fearful Symmetry's last scenes. It looks like... Yeah, they rescued a guy from the ship, and it's scene 78, page 51. I can see where the blocking is weird on this one, but that's what's going on. Vehicle, I want to know why you set us up, silliness. So here we are in the cargo bay, and let's... Yeah, so this is the end of the Fearful Symmetry, the third episode. They did the two-part premiere, and this is Fearful Symmetry. Based on the original Brown and Yeager script from 1995. So yeah, that's the original script. There were a few minor things cut out, but for the most part, it's the same. It's the story from 2002. The going back to the holodeck to be the Tigers at the end didn't need to be there. It's more dramatic if the changelings die, and why is the auto fader making me like gray? Anyway, so yeah, the people in the story, and we don't know whether that it's supposed to be Vita Cola from the future story or the other one necessarily. It could be a relative of him. So I don't know if another of him reappears in another episode. If not, then this is where he died. He gets to come back and play a character. They get to Salinas in there. Threw in the Paper Town character, Salinas, who showed up on DS9. We have some other some other references. Nog was not supposed to be in the script originally. We included a few Nog scenes. Which kind of, by adding one or two Nog scenes, you kind of pretty much make it the length that it was before. It was a little long, so yeah, and there was, but I think it'll be fine in this form. I don't think it'll be too long in this form. Not a lot of character development. It's an action story. I don't know how we're going to film it. Action parts. I have no idea how we're going to do that. But we filmed it. We did the bridge parts. For most of it was bridge parts. It was a bottle show with some scenes on the station and the meeting room. If it's on the station, it's still a bottle show. There was like one planet scene that was less than 8 minutes long. So yeah, it's a bottle show. The other one, the Arbiter, is slightly larger than that in terms of it's being also a bottle show. And there's like 2 trips to a planet in that one. So the Arbiter has, but they're not that long. Mainly that's a bottle show as well. So we're not doing that today. We're doing it tomorrow. So here we are in the Fearful Symmetry. I ironically referenced the Captain Kirk line from Star Trek, which was ad-libbed at the very end. So yeah, the Dominion War and all that. This story is kind of making fun of the Deep Space Nine finale. Now in its rewritten form, in its 2002 version, by having it be like the Dominion came back. And I know there's a Space Vanguard's version where everything was changed, and all the characters were changed and the races were changed. But in this version, it's making fun of the finale. It's saying the Dominion, of course, they came back. Why wouldn't they? Yeah, Odo touching her heart did nothing.
It just prolonged the inevitable that they would return. And I think Natalis is on the same wavelength, and he had the Dominion kind of come back in Picard season 3. So he sort of knew, but weren't sure what they were going to do with it. And yeah, so yeah, we didn't know exactly what they were going to do, and then they started theirs when we were writing ours. So well, ours was done writing and then theirs was 2 weeks later, a couple of weeks later. But this script, this story is based on something from 1996, and the Arbiter is also from around 95, 96. I think it's 96. So yeah, it was completed. We did enough today, and we're done. Just hang out and stuff. Yeah. No, I mean the idea that Odo, just cured the Founder. The idea of them infecting the Founders in the first place with something is messed up enough. But then he just cures her by touching her heart. They did it before. How's Star Trek like? It's so cool. He touches her heart. It's like it's something Odo wouldn't do. That's what's wrong with it. No. And Kira wouldn't do it either. And no, Bashir didn't. No. Bashir with Ezri in the beginning of that finale. No. No. And Bashir was actually with Kira the whole time. And Odo was pretending to be with Kira. But he secretly loved Quark. The slash fiction continues. So yeah, I know that in that universe that stuff did happen and it's canon. But in the fanfic universe, other things happen. So you to imply that Jeremy Astor is dating Javan Tal, the ancestor of Idira Tal from Discovery. And Idira Tal is 700 years later. It doesn't really work out, but sure, why not? And Jeremy Astor is not a child anymore. He was on on Next Generation. He was like 12 or something. Worf's Bond brother or whatever. That sounds gay anyway. Rashenko's, and then technically Rashenko's nephew, but uncle. This is weird. Older nephew than the uncle. Weird. Anyway, he'd be his uncle, but he's his nephew. Yeah. So he'd be Astro would be his uncle, but he'd be older than his yeah. I guess he'd be his uncle. Anyway, it still doesn't make sense. But yeah. But this is Jeremy Astor 40 years after Next Generation. So he's like 40 something. So yeah. Then Tal is 40 something. So they're the same age. So it's not weird. Yeah, so it's more of a drama episode, more serious, contemplative, Dominion War thing. And essentially they now have the option of this device that they've captured in this version of it. They're going to destroy it in the original version. Now they have a device that could bring the Dominion that are attacking again to their knees. So they have the MacGuffin device. I can see why they didn't want to do this. And not in the rejection letter, but in the note that disappeared. Of course it disappeared, yes. It said we're going to do something else with the Dominion, and you wanted to do something with the female Vorder and the Dominion, the other, and the double cross and a triple cross at the end. That's cool. But, you wouldn't have known. And you had a good grasp of Odo and Quark and Cisco and Kira and everybody, pretty much. And, just like you said, you get a good grasp of Tuvok as well. Janeway and the other story. So, in this version, they're older, and they show up. That's cool. You get to see that. And I like that. Miral Paris thing, too. You might think, oh, no, that's gross. Miral Paris was a baby at the end of Voyager. Well, that was 2378, and it is now 2404. Yeah, so she's older, too. A lot older. At 2398, she was 20. So, yeah, she's 26, somewhere there in the story. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and the other girl is Molly O'Brien would be 36, somewhere around there at this point. Anyway, so somewhere like that. Kiriyoshi would, of course, be somewhere 30-something. 30-something. Because he was born near the end of Deep Space Nine. So, these guys are all older. And I like that O'Brien doesn't even address it. Like, I ad-libbed a scene in there where Kiriyoshi shows up in front of Chief O'Brien and the Doctor and says, "Hi, Dad," and they both answer, "Yes." So it's canon. It's canon. That kid is not O'Brien's. He might have raised it, but it ain't. Well, he wasn't. He wasn't his. He wasn't his biological. He was his daddy, not his father. So this is Adam Brown, the author of the show here. The author of Fearful Symmetry and the Arbiter. I guess you could stick this on the end of the Arbiter episode or on the beginning of the other one, making of and all that stuff. The persona of Kal Kat, of course. They're both kind of interconnected. There's different cool things going on there, inspired by David Gerald and Ian Alexander and Blue DeBarro and a number of other people from Star Trek. I didn't know them, but it is interesting that there's another Adam Brown that was on Hidden Frontier, and I was reading the background of the Hidden Frontier show. It was a fan fiction series, and he was a character that was similar to that of this Javan Tall. So I guess you would put this in the end of the other, somewhere in between, yeah, because this is more about the DS9. So let's put it in the DS9 one. So I added to that. Javan Tall, or Javar Tall, is a Trill, is the second host of Tal. You got it wrong in the original story. In the Cillian saga, you said it was Yadira's symbiote. No, it's actually Gray. It's Gray's symbiote. It's the other guy. It's Alexander's symbiote, not the other girl, not the girl. It's the other one. You got that wrong. You mixed that up. Honest mistake. They're both trans. They both similar characters. They both had like a Trill inside them, and then didn't, and she had the Trill symbiote temporarily inside her. So, yeah. So she's kind of a host of the same thing. It was very confusing. So yeah. So they built a robot body for him in the future, so that he could be with his significant other. But they're gender fluid, so they were both. She sort of identifies as a female, and he sort of identifies as a male, but they're them. So it's the gender fluid thing. I think Mr. Gerald would have been all about that, and he would have been all that's cool. And he'd only paid attention to season 1 of Discovery, in which they essentially had two characters, Stamets and Kober, and basically did the kill the gay guy at the end. He doesn't know they brought him back, but they brought him back dumb, or he does, and he doesn't like that they brought him back. And in Blood and Fire, the story that he wrote for Next Generation, and then rewrote as the thing, it was different. It was about the bloodworms, which ties into the Gorn, oddly enough. But yeah. So in any case, he does actually kill the gay character at the end, because it was the 80s, and that's what you do in the 80s. In the rewrite, he killed him again. But Hidden Frontier was a show that was a fan film series, Star Trek fan fiction series, was about to not do that. So the rise of this other character who was similar, who was eventually married to a relationship, and was married to Jeremy Astor's brother, who we didn't actually meet. It wasn't Jeremy Astor, it was his brother. And the Trill background is that he had. He was a joined Trill that wasn't supposed to be, similar to Ezri Dax, actually. So similar to Ezri Dax. Ties into the Trill. The Trill are all transgendered. They all have a creature inside them, manifest as their other personality. They're all transgendered. So, which they didn't quite do right on Deep Space Nine. They did better in the ripoff Babylon 5. But in Deep Space Nine, So they tried to rectify that. When they went to the 31st century, David Gerald should check out the season seasons 3 and 4 when they went to the other century, and they did it a little better. They got Alexander and Dubai on board, and they put them in there as the two younger transgender characters, because Culber and Stamets would be like father figures to them. So they reinvented that. They rewrote it as something else. And they didn't kill them. They sent one of them off on a mission. They sent Gray as he got to be a golem, which is like a robot, and got to go off on a mission. I don't know what happened to him at the end of season 3. He's assuming he's fine. They threw it in dialogue. He's fine. Similar to how they did on Hidden Frontier when the Doll and Aster left each other and went on to be captain. The other guy didn't do that, and yeah. So as I wasn't on that show, I'm just familiar with it. There's another guy with a similar name, yes. And the fans assume, oh, he's totally on that show, and no, I wasn't. No. I was going to be on Excalibur, basically. But it didn't end up happening. So I ended up we were doing our own fan film, Star Trek Chimera, that led to all this. The 3-part miniseries, 2019, that led to all this stuff. So, and it's fun to look back and have read some of that stuff and go like, you know what? This is the Tal character in our story, the Dal Tal, the Javan Tal, it's very similar. Character is so similar to. And his relationship with Jeremy Astor is so similar to the Hidden Frontier, and it's like 30 years later in this version, so they're older. Even in that version, it was the 2380s, and they were older. They were in their 20s at that point, so it was fine. Even 30s, early 30s at that point. At this point, it's 2404, so they're in their 40s, even early 50s at this point. So yeah, they're in their 40s, so it's fine. No, it's not weird. He's not dating a kid that's related to Worf. It's not like that. That wouldn't happen in that group. But yeah, yeah, it's interesting that this other story. I was just reading up on it. I thought I would chime in because I was like, hey, that's like Hidden Frontier. Is there a relation? Is there a connection to Hidden Frontier? And yes, it is. It was unintentional. It really was unintentional. We had these other characters there. I think Discovery also was familiar with Hidden Frontier. So it's yet another one of those on the same wavelength things going on. But yeah, you don't kill off the gay character. Gerald didn't mean to do that and be so cliched in the 80s, subverting expectations. He meant to have them go on and have a relationship. Because it's the future. It's now 2023. When we saw him, it was 2022. But now it's 2023. So at the convention. So it's like, well, yeah, you don't kill the gay character because they would do that because it was like a moral, goofy, family values thing. They would say, no, the person who's in sin with the other person, no. It's like, no, that's not it. You want to have you don't need to do that now. They can just have a relationship and they're just friends. Which is why at the end of that subplot is not a subplot from the original Fearful Symmetry at all, nor was the Quark and Odo scene, nor the other scenes. They were just plutonic friends in the original one, but now that it's, in the rewrite, we added some scenes that were not so plutonic, because this is essentially shipping. It's relationshiping. Yes, we know what it is. We know it's relationshiping, but it's a little less raunchy than Lower Decks. So it doesn't quite go there. Like, they don't literally have a season 2 orgy at any point. That would be weird. But yeah, yes, with Kal Kat riding on the commander there. Commander Ransom. Yeah, he would probably do that. No, just kidding. Maybe. Oh my. I have met, we did meet George Takei, so, in 22 as well, at the convention. And his husband. They were nice. His husband was nice. So, anyway, that's all I got to say. Yeah, so, interesting. Interesting there's a little bit of connection with Discovery there. And there kind of always was, because when you look at season 2 and 3 of Discovery, where they were 3 and 4 of Discovery, where they were set in the distant future, and the Planet of the Fallen one story as well from ours. our perspective, our Discovery episode, season. We did a Discovery season in there. We had to do one, so we put our characters in the future and had them do their thing. Yeah, from that perspective, it's like, oh yeah, there was a Kal Kat there. There was a guy named Cal. He was there. Um, there was even a Chip Chase type guy in a wheelchair. That was Mr. Mitchell, but he wanted to be in Star Trek, so they let him. Yeah. So fine, he's in a regular old style wheelchair. Fine, they I'm not bothered by that. Yeah, so I'm not bothered by there being transgender characters in Star Trek. That's cool. They would do that. There shouldn't be any problem with that gay and transgender in Star Trek. If they're right wingers and they're upset about that, they should get over themselves because it's the new millennium. It's almost 25 years into the new millennium. Get over it. They're not a threat to you in any way. It's a threat to your masculinity. These two characters, they're not. Totally not. They're people. They're not. They're playing teenagers. They're a little older than teenagers. They're born in the 90s. They're in the 20s, but yeah, they're playing teenagers in the story. The two transgendered people, Dal and Gray, basically. Adira and Gray, I should say. Yeah. It's kind of confusing because of the trill part. Where they separated the trill part and sent it on its way. It's kind of weird, but it wasn't killing the gays. They were okay with that. So. And maybe David Gerald will check it out again and see. Oh yeah, seasons 3 and 4 were better. They weren't as clingy and weird. But yeah. So the characters themselves and they weren't as affronted. That's fine. But yeah, they tried to improve it. Discovery should have taken place in the distant future. 700 years later is a bit much though. 900 if he counts the other timeline. 100 years earlier. Or 800, I guess. But it's a different timeline, so it's fine. They gotta send the temporal people to go get them. I would assume that at the end of season 5, they're gonna have to bring them back because they can't be in the future. They have to bring them back. Yeah, they have to. They have to go get them. Yeah. I'm assuming they're gonna do something like that. But they can leave the two in the future because they were part of the future. They can't go back with them. They have to stay in the future. But they can go back and meet her distant symbiote. They didn't. Yeah, the years don't add up there either. There were only 7 symbiotes. There should have been like 15. 800 years later, there should have been a bunch of them. But yes, Javan Tal is based on one of the characters from the symbiote pool in the future, and he does look like Cisco, but he's not Cisco. It's not supposed to be Jake or something. But and as for the episode, not doing a dinner scene with Quark and Odo at the end to further the joke, we don't want to, because the end, or Jeremy Astor gets together with the captain scene, and they're whatever. We don't want that either. We wanted that story to end right where it ends, because it's more of an impact. It sets up the rest of the stories to come. There's this ambiguous thing. Now it is a little awkward that the key draconians encountered in the story are supposed to be symbiotes and changelings and stuff, because where they go in the next episode is Keptera. It's a different planet, but the Kepterans were there in the key draconian story. The unnamed alien group was there. It was the Kepterans. So that's the connection. So Tal beamed down to a planet that wasn't Keptera, it was key draconers. But yeah, it's not. They're not supposed to be connected. In the original story, they were not connected. The Voyager one was set in another part of the universe. There was a couple of scenes we cut out. Main character scenes, very brief. They're little scene split scenes, including one where some of the characters were talking in the background that didn't need to be in there. There were people saying stuff that was irrelevant to the story that didn't need to be there. We did need the 2 brig scenes though, so keep those. Having written the story, I don't know what we were thinking when came up with that scene where Cisco managed to contact them through the wormhole and they're okay. assume I was making a fun of G.I. Joe right there with the Duke say okay, he's on a coma, I think. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. The wormhole shouldn't work that way. It did kind of work that way on Deep Space Nine, though. They would contact them in the Gamma Quadrant. I was like, how the hell did they do that? They could not have done that. That's not. No, subspace is dumb enough with their. And they do have that is dumb. But subspace is dumb enough. They would not have been able to contact them in real time at all in Star Trek. But they do that, and certainly not through the wormhole. So that scene, you could go back and have Kira and Bashir worried about the commander, but because this is a rewrite taking place 30 years after the Deep Space Nine story that I wrote, they wouldn't be as worried about Tal, who is the spiritual descendant of Cisco, at all. They would be like, oh, yeah, I kind of know him. He has our ship. We like him, but from their Kira and Bashir's perspective, they're in their 70s. They're still on the station, and they're late 60s, and they're still on the station, and they're like, well, well, we're just kind of hanging out here, and that's why we haven't had any oldster episodes of Star Trek, because that would be kind of weird. It would be like an SNL sketch or something. Because the older Star Trek. This is as close as they get, because they have Bashir and Odo and Quark and everybody who would be older. And it doesn't connect to the Lower Decks episode, because the Lower Decks episode would go to Quark's planet, the Ferengi planet, because, well, that was written at some other point, probably during when we were writing this, but yeah, Lower Decks. And I didn't know what that author was doing, so it's not connected. So Quark could still have a Quark bar on, probably does, on the Ferengi planet as well. I'm assuming he does, so it works. It's hilarious that they referenced our Star Trek experience thing. That is awesome in that episode. Thanks to Mr. McMahon for doing that. Because they know where they got that ship set that they rebuilt on the other show, on Metallis' show. They know. It was the Trek experience. They were still the bridge that was left. I packed it away. Put it on the tour. So, yeah. But oddly enough, when I went on the tour, they had the Kirk bridge from Amira Darkly. They'd set that up there. They had that. You could sit on the bridge and stuff. That was a different bridge. It was the classic Trek bridge. So, so it's not a comment and chime in on that. But yeah, and yeah, Pocketbooks took the title for the story. But the title is from a Blake poem, so it's not like it would be like if they used "to be or not to be" as a catchphrase from Shakespeare, except it's Blake. It's William Blake. He's a poet from a long time ago, 200 years ago or something. I think so. 1800s. I think. Yeah, tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. Oh, no mortal eye can see, defy the fearful symmetry. Something like that. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, and no mortal hand or eye could see, defy thy fearful symmetry. There. Yeah, so defy thy fearful symmetry. Fearful symmetry, which could also be the Borg. Fearful symmetry. And yeah, there's no tiger in the episode. We just couldn't generate a tiger. It would have been silly if it was a lion, because then it would have been reminiscent of that weird Katy Perry video where she's doing movie quotes and catchphrases as well. And I made a parody of it called Meow. It was a roar. It was Roar. That was a song. I made a parody of it called Meow, where they mentioned Zero to Hero and Eye of the Tiger and all that in the song, and it's a lion. It's a lion in the song, so the tamed lion that shows up, and it's like a circus lion or something. Well, the old circus lion shows up. So Eye of the Tigers from Rocky, and Zero to Heroes from Hercules and 06, which is funny. A number of other things, but Hero 6 came later, so Zero to Hero. Yeah, Zero to Hero is also from. It's not just Hercules. It's from some. It was a comedy in the 80s that's from. Yeah. I'm sure they've used that before. Also, shipping is relation shipping. Yeah. It's not that hard to figure these phrases out. They're not that hard. Look them up. Yeah. I decided to ramble on about these characters. Paying homage to characters in 700 years in the future by referencing her host in the past, their host in the past, Javan Tal and Jeremy Astor in this version. Yeah. So, and it's a reference to it is Jeremy Astor. It's a reference to the Next Generation, and it's a reference to these two characters who are in their 40s, so it's fine. Yeah. So it's fine. Yeah. So cool. Yeah. In the story. And yeah, I didn't want to have it end with them necessarily being poignant and showing up and going, it's much more impactful to show don't tell in that case. He does show up shocked. And then we end there. Because we don't need to know what happens to them after that. We're assuming maybe Quark and Nodo did go on a date. I don't know. Maybe they hung out together. We don't need another scene in the story, even though I had one in the original going on the holodeck. Well, that was because originally on the holodeck it was supposed to be Jake, who was like a teenager, and he was on the holodeck. And it was supposed to be Jake and his father coming back to comfort him. But in this case, it's not the case. In this case, it's just another guy. Well, it's his friend, but more than friend. Oh my! But yeah, Tal's friend. Yeah. So I decided that you don't need anything there. He's yeah. It's enough to know that the characters are there at the end, and anything extra would be silly, and the episode's supposed to be dramatic. Yeah. So yeah, don't add anything extra. But yeah, nobody dies, except for the two bad guys. But do the two bad guys die? It is silly track, and villains can die. But is this the end of the Vita-Cola character? And hopefully he didn't say his real name by accident somewhere. Is it the end? It's not necessarily the end of the lady, so maybe it's not necessarily the end of him either. But it is silly track. Things regenerate. As it turns out, they retconned that Tad Riker, was in fact played by J. Bergman in the story. And the whole time, that kind of retcons back to the other story. So does that mean that Mike and Rich and Jay were in the first season of Starship Locations Strange World? Yes. Not together. They weren't all together in the same scene. Maybe they were once or twice, but yeah, this one establishes that, that was that guy the whole time. Yeah. Which is kind of a cheat, but it's fan fiction. It's fine. I'm assuming that the Hidden Frontier guy and his friend are still out there. That was actually a spin-off of the Bryan Singer scene in Star Trek First Contact in 1996 when they were doing the thing. They had this First Contact. Commander Hawk was supposed to be gay in the story, but they changed that and they never mentioned it, so he's technically not. Yeah. But yeah, Lieutenant Hawk. That's right. Well, yeah. So and Singer was in there too. And we won't go into Bryan Singer's later exploits. That's okay. We won't do that. But yeah, so that's I rambled on for a while, but I thought to just address that elephant in the room for your edification at the end of Fearful Symmetry. Put this in there. The making of Fearful Symmetry. Yeah. Sure.